Elementary school transgenders innocent birds. Donald Trump can't be a hero. And Harvard, 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 stupid, 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 next on The Dr. Duke Show. Everyone, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Every week, Katie and I cover those stories impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses across the globe. Greetings to our loyal listeners, and if you listen and you're not loyal, well, get loyal. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never, ever miss an episode. Make sure you stick around because a little bit later in the show, we're going to discuss how Ivy League students are trying to bring segregation back to college campuses. Meanwhile, off campus, African-American people, with real jobs, don't like the idea of segregation. All that's coming up. How do you feel about that, Katie?
Well,
should we bring back segregation at the Dr. Duke Show?
I feel like it is already segregated.
Let's build a wall between Mike. Us, we're the talent, and he's the button pushing horse jockey. So we'll build a wall between us and him and demand reparations.
I'm sick of looking at his face anyway.
Our first story today, speaking of stupidity, is about parental objections. Even when parents object, public school teaches 6-year-olds about transgender ravens and gender fluidity. This begs the question: should 6-year-olds be taught to use transgendered pronouns and believe in so-called gender fluidity? Hint, they ought not to because they don't know what those words mean. The leaders of Superior Elementary School in Boulder Valley School District, and that makes sense, they're all smoking dope there, they now think so in Colorado. Last November, the school showed children from kindergarten to 5th grade videos from Queer Kid Stuff. It's a website. It's an actual YouTube website, if you can call it that. A stage play about transgenderism to promote acceptance and inclusivity, especially related to the transgender community. Some parents are outraged and seeking serious legal remedies.
Yeah, and this actually took place back in November, but all of this is happening still today because of the legal ramifications that may come from this. And so what they did was, it was the day before Thanksgiving break. And an email was sent out to the parents saying, oh, we're going to show this, we're going to have this group come in and do this play. And on that very same day that the play, they got the email, the play was happening in within the same school district, another school. And so these parents weren't really notified about what was happening. They did have a little bit of time to opt out, but there was a twist to it because they said it was supposed to be a one-day thing that they were going to put this play on and they were going to show these couple videos. And then, oops, it just turned into a 2-day event. And actually what happens is there was a father who went into the school on the second day because about 30% of the kids had stayed home the previous day because they were able to opt out. But then when the dad showed up, he said they were watching I think it was the he, she, and they. What is gender video? And after the video, the teacher had the kids partner up to talk about how they felt inside and what pronoun they each preferred.
If there are boys and girls and people and all of them can wear ties and dresses, then how can I tell who is what gender?
That's actually really easy, Teddy. All you have to do is ask someone what their pronoun is. A pronoun is the word you use to talk about someone when you don't use their name, like he for boy, she for girl, and some people use they. When you meet someone, just ask them what their pronoun is.
These kids were actually being taught in one of the programs of the stories they watched. No More Gender Roles was the title of this video. And it's all about Lindsay telling Teddy the teddy bear that, quote, traditional gender roles are mean, they are not fun, and they are a big problem. Look, Mom and Dad, this isn't just the schools telling your kids to be more expansive and understanding and tolerant, to go ahead and be boys if they think they're boys and be girls if they think they're girls. No. This is not just about that. This is about telling them that traditional gender roles are mean and they're not friendly and they're a big problem.
And in the same video, they actually talked about the term androgynous.
Some people think that only girls should be feminine and only boys should be masculine.
What about androgynous?
Sometimes people get confused when someone's androgynous. Sometimes people get confused about me because I can look and express myself androgynously.
They get confused?
They get confused about my gender.
How many 25-year-olds, much less 5-year-olds, know what androgynous means? And the thing that when you watch it is they keep talking about how, well, there's girls and there's boys and then there's people, because people are people.
Because girls and boys aren't people.
Girls are girls,
They're
boys
mean.
are boys, and people are people,
It's
is how they
mean.
say it. It is mean. And yet they are, if you watch the video, making it very clear that it's a binary choice in their minds. You have to think this way, that if you have any feminine characteristics, you have to be a girl, and masculine, you have to be a boy. And they're trying to break this down, but they make it opposite of what they're actually trying to push.
The irony is that they're fighting binaries with binary thinking, right? And it's not even, it's heteronormativity bad. Girls is girls, boys and boys bad and mean and unacceptable. But 8,000 different flexible genders is the only way you'll see things. The other one I would point out to you at home, Mom and Dad, is let this sink in for a second. How much time, resources, and money, how much of the real educational time that your kid should be spending on reading, writing, and arithmetic, how much of it is being co-opted by this garbage? This thing went on for 2 days, right? One day wasn't enough of this. They had to do 2 days of this. They're yanking your kids out of school, out of the classroom. They're subjecting this to that. You're subjecting your kids to this with only loosely letting you opt out, right? This is CYA opt out, right? We're going to wait until it's already being done in one school to let you know, oh, kind of, now you can opt out. With the implication being by the time most parents even get around to reading this, it's already over.
Well, we know at least some of the financial cost because the district pays about $19,000 annually for its staff to be trained by a queer endeavor. It's a program in the CU Boulder Department of Education on how to embed LGBTQ worldviews into curriculum, a process they call queering the curriculum. And their founder states, our approach moves beyond the anti-bullying discourse and works towards systemic change.
Queer endeavors, right? The idea, and look, we've been saying this for years. The curriculum, what your kids are supposedly learning, is simply just the augur in the, what do they call, the agar in the petri dish, right? All that math and science and English, the reason you send your kids to schools, it's just the fertilizer for which the little microbes get to grow of all of their social engineering.
So what happened is there was a group of some brave parents, we'll call them, and they had a formal discrimination complaint, and that happened back in November, but it's still going on now here in April. And they claimed that the school had violated its own policies regarding how sexuality information should be taught and failed to provide all parents with appropriate notification and an opportunity to opt out. But of course, the response is that the school is still insisting that the topic and content presented in the video and the musical are not part of the human sexuality, so they didn't need to follow the school's policies and teaching policies related to human sexuality and controversial content.
What you're seeing now is the argument being made by schools that the primary purpose of your kids' education, and we're going to, under the cover of teaching your kids the intellectual skills that you think you're sending them to school for, the primary purpose is to socialize your kids. We're not concerned about math only to the degree that math allows us to teach certain anti-capitalistic issues. We're only concerned about history and language arts to the degree it allows us to mainstream transgenderism and homosexuality and alternative relationships and marriages. Just know what you're trying to know what's going to happen here, Mom. You are sending your kids to these schools to be undereducated in terms of subject matter and to be completely socialized along radical progressive lines, most of which you wouldn't agree with.
And that's why you see all across the nation, we have a bunch of parents who aren't paying attention, and then when their kid comes home and says, hey, I want to transition, they celebrate it.
4 years old. 4 years old. A leftist physical education teacher on Twitter celebrated the gender transition of his 4-year-old son, triumphing over the fact that Waylon has now become Willow. 4 years old. Mom and Dad, does it surprise you in the least, Katie?
No.
That this is a teacher? This is somebody who works in the schools?
K through 6.
K through 6, right?
I like how he says it's official, as if, they made that distinction, because it's not actually the genitalia that determine anything. It's that piece of paper they have that now says that Waylon is Willow. It took a lot, all caps, a lot of paperwork to make the gender transition.
And that's the takeaway for the liberals. Not that this is child abuse, not that the logical question, how in the world is a 4-year-old qualified to determine what her gender is or his gender is? What possible ability do they have intellectually? How prefrontal cortex lacking are they in some ways to be able to even have this conversation, to even listen to this conversation without being indoctrinated and brainwashed? Interestingly, when this broke on social media, a lot of Americans pushed back, started writing this, texting these people, telling them, what are you, crazy? This is child abuse, you're lunatics. All right, but again, Nothing can puncture the narcissistic bubble of this. You know what this is? Go back to that picture. This is about them. It's about you, mom and dad. You're virtue signaling how wonderful you are. This is the liberal equivalent of what liberals hate. Remember how liberals got on the beauty pageant scene? How putting little girls, 4, 5, 6-year-old girls in the beauty pageant, down south, right? How bigoted and backward and exploitative this was. This is the liberal version of that. Taking your kids and putting them on display for your vanity and for your photo opportunities. It's the exact same thing, only you don't have the guts, liberals, to call it what it is, child abuse.
Well, before we move on, we just want to take a moment to thank the audience, you, the viewers. Last week, we announced Facebook was coming down on us hard and permanently removed our ad account because our conservative views on education just simply doesn't align with their community standards. So we jumped over to YouTube, and knowing they may soon decide to remove our Facebook page altogether. But this weekend, we've received countless emails and messages from all of you, so many of our followers, encouraging us to keep going on Facebook until they eventually shut us down. So we created this show to educate moms and dads. And if you guys are asking us to stay on this platform, then god darn it, that's what we're going to do. So all you need to do now here is like, comment, and share this episode because Facebook no longer allows us to do it. Also, we're still on YouTube, Twitter, and iTunes. So if you get the show there, please help us spread the word on the Dr. Duke Show. Thanks again for all of your support. It really does mean the world to us. And it was really quite amazing to see all of your support for the show.
Yeah, let me second that. While we're going to remain on Facebook because we have a loyal Facebook following, even though they've handicapped us, and the fact that they're handicapping us in our ability to promote ourselves means that it's just a matter of time. The bigger the show gets, the more we're going to be under their radar. We are still on YouTube, and I would urge you to please consider joining us on YouTube as well, just so we have alternative platforms to continue to bring you this kind of absolutely unique, one-of-a-kind programming. There's nothing like this show in the entire nation, so we want to make sure it keeps growing.
All right, well, moving on, we have a middle school teacher who is banning a student from writing about her hero because his name is Donald Trump. And so, I mean, do you remember back in school, at least one year, we all got that school project where we had to pick our hero. And, you know, we had to write about what makes a hero and who do you pick and why do you pick him. It was a really fun project. And so we have a Long Island 6th grader named Bella Moscato at Samoset Middle School, and she was really excited to do her project. And the worksheet was titled, "What is a Hero to You?" And so she thought about it and she chose Donald Trump as her hero. But the teacher said, "Oh no, you can't do it."
She said that I wasn't allowed to do Donald Trump because he spreads negativity and says bad stuff about women. The thing I didn't get, she was okay with somebody doing Barack Obama, but not okay with doing Donald Trump. That's what got me angry.
And notice the title of the assignment. The title of the assignment is, "What does a hero mean to you?" In other words, we're not telling you what your heroes are. We're not telling you how to choose heroes. We're going to let you as the students. What a wonderful idea. You tell us, honey, what you think a hero is. Well, she did, and she got slapped down for it. Your hero can't be Donald Trump. It needs to be Barack Obama, all right? You can choose Barack Obama. Honey, you go ahead and choose Barack Obama, but you can't choose Donald Trump because according to me, he says bad things about women. And you know, that's a bad role model for you. So in other words, stop calling the assignment what heroes mean to you. Call it what it is. We're going to hand you get in line. We're going to hand you your heroes. Here's your Ruth Bader Ginsburg topic. Here's your Barack Obama. Oh, and here's your Michelle Obama, right? Here's her. You can have those heroes. Just call it what it is. Be honest. Everybody knows you're doing it. Just be honest about it.
I do like that her answer for the question saying, what positive contribution has this person made to society? And again, Donald Trump. She says, Donald Trump has helped millions of people by creating a great economy. He is fighting every day to protect people from drugs crossing the border. She spoke the truth.
And
so proud.
And she's for borders.
So proud. But the superintendent, Kenneth Graham, issued a statement to the local news alleging that it is not accurate that this student was told that they were not allowed to conduct research on any individual for a school assignment, including President Trump. To the best of our knowledge, because they couldn't just actually, to the best of our knowledge, they couldn't get the actual truth. By choice, the student is still conducting the project on Donald Trump. But the dad, Arthur Moscato, went to a school board meeting, and he had a few words to say. He says, "My daughter didn't lie. My daughter's hero is the president of our country. I can't believe that anybody in the school would tell my daughter that a guy can't that guy can't be her hero. I'm incensed by this.
Did you see how the principal moved the goalposts as well?
Oh, yeah.
She can research whatever she wants. But what you didn't answer the question, principal, is she allowed to have Donald Trump as her hero? That's what this contention is all about. Your teacher said she was not allowed to, and you switched it to research. Okay, we're not going to let you have your hero, but if you want to, in the dark corners of your free time, zip over to the library and research Donald Trump, we'll permit that. Isn't it amazing how just generous they are at these schools?
Well, and then you wonder why, when even across the globe now, you have another school head who's telling parents how to solve a bullying problem they have. All you have to do, daughter who's being bullied, just put a hijab on your head, because that makes sense. It's a 5th grade girl in a Frankfurt school. She was being singled out because she has blonde hair, no headscarf, a German Hebrew name, and she's a Christian. And so the headmaster says, well, you know, she's German, but she can solve all this by just putting a headscarf on, a hijab.
Yeah, just stop pretending to be German, right? This is amazing to me that Germany has gotten so far away from the racial attitudes, thankfully, of the Nazi period, that they've gone the exact opposite way, that they refuse to defend Germanness. So you're bringing in, ironically, you're bringing in immigrants with a, let's just call it what it is, a fascist background. Radical Islamist fascism, right? The idea that there's only one religion, pluralism is wrong, women's rights is wrong, Christianity and Judaism are an evil slur. So you're bringing back into your country, Angela Merkel, people who have worldviews that are very similar to the Nazi period that you're so ashamed of and so ashamed of Germany for. Meanwhile, when little girls who happen to be blonde with Germanic Hebrew names, blonde girls with Germanic Hebrew names, and who happen to be Christian, you sell them out. Tell them to start dressing like the Islamic people. It's staggering how irresponsible this is, and that's what happens in progressive Western European countries today.
And the mom of this daughter says, my daughter broke down nervously in 5th grade. She had cramps and a lot of fear of going to school. She was beaten and verbally attacked on the way to school. Now, when you're supposed to go to school, I thought it's all about being safe and protecting our children and educating them and tolerance and all this. But no. As the headmaster said, your daughter does not have to say that she is German. Besides, you can give her a headscarf.
And we know, both places like Germany and Sweden, we know that there are all sorts of rapes by these immigrants. This is not fear-mongering. This is not anti-immigrant posturing. We know that statistically, these governments are underreporting the rapes that are taking place of Western girls, German girls, Swedish girls. We know it's happening. This is not made-up garbage. This is not a conspiracy theory. If the German people, if the world media knew just exactly how German girls were being abused, just exactly how Swedish girls were being abused, raped, let's call it what it is, by these unchecked and oftentimes undocumented immigrants. If we knew that, the outrage would be so much greater. And meanwhile, the response of the German authorities is act more Muslim.
Basically. And like you said, it's not an isolated incident. I mean, we have many examples, but just one of the cases that I read that I thought was so sad was back in December, a 6-year-old named Yara was the only German speaker in her class, and she claimed that she was viciously beaten by migration background pupils, air quotes, and even cut with a sharp object. She commented on her experience in the classroom, and she said, again, 6 years old, I was really sad. Sometimes I had stomach aches. If I told my teacher I didn't feel good, the teacher would say, there's always something wrong with you.
Something wrong with you. And let that sink in for a moment, Mom and Dad. The 6-year-old is the only German-speaking student in a German classroom. You welcome in the immigrants, and not only do you not ask them to assimilate, to ask these Muslim immigrants, these refugees, to assimilate would be, of course, racist, we're told. And yet, you force your own kids to assimilate to them. Somehow that's not racist. To allow this poor kid, who is the only German-speaking kid in a German classroom, to tell them you're out of luck, start acting like them, that's anti-assimilation, right? It's not just telling the immigrants not to assimilate, it's forcing Germans to assimilate to a foreign way of life and then suffer the consequences if they don't. It is shocking, and it's happening all across Western Europe.
Well, we have a real treat for you now, because earlier today, Alex Newman was sitting in studio right here in my chair to discuss the UK and how they're now mandating registration of all homeschool children.
Alex Newman, it's really great to have you in studio. You've been traveling the globe from Sweden and all across America. Good to be with you in person today.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much, Steve.
And you've written another home run article about how the United Kingdom, the Department of Education in the United Kingdom, is now going to formally begin to monitor all homeschool kids. Talk a little bit about that.
That's right. It looks like they're going to be treating homeschoolers like sex offenders. You know, we create registries of sex offenders, and so now the government has determined that they need a registry of all the homeschoolers. They want to keep track of who they are, where they are, what they're learning, etc. And so this is a very Orwellian development for the British.
What is their argument? We know that the Brits want to. We see what's going on in the internet. England's promising us the most restrictive set of internet rules of any country in the world. They love, love, love to shut down and control. But with regards to education, what do you think is really behind this in terms of the UK government trying to really crack down and treat, like you said, simply moms and dads who want to educate their kids at home as if they were somehow already guilty of crimes?
Yeah, well, the pretext for all this is that parents may not be teaching their children all the LGBT stuff that's required under the Equalities Act. And, you know, they never say it directly, but they imply that there's Muslims out there who may be teaching anti-British values. Really, they're targeting the Christians. We know that full well, and they've been on this mission for a while. But the official excuse is that parents may be teaching their children extreme views. One official even described what parents might teach their children as poison. And so that's the pretext.
In other words, giving kids an expressly Christian education, one that is traditional in its notion of marriage and sexuality, that's poison. We know that the British hierarchy certainly believes that. How are British moms and dads? First of all, is there a vibrant tradition like there is in this country of homeschooling in England and the United Kingdom? And second of all, how are those few homeschooling families responding to this?
Yeah, well, homeschooling is, you know, pretty active in Britain. Actually, we reported last year at the Freedom Project that the numbers had doubled from just in a span of a few years. I think more and more parents, as they see the disaster unfolding in the schools, say, well, hey, let's try keeping them at home. And I think the British government has noticed this. You know, a lot of parents are upset about this. Some Christian organizations are speaking out. But unfortunately, it doesn't apply to most British people, and most British people don't care. And Britain, you know, we need to be honest, has now become is no longer a free society. I mean, they put pastors in jail for criticizing homosexuality. It's gotten really extreme. They even went after an elderly pro-life gentleman. So you don't have free speech in Britain. I read just the other day they raided a mom in her kitchen in front of her kids for pointing out that a man who pretends to be a woman was actually a man on the internet. So it's gone, you know, way down from where it used to be, and it's getting worse. This
is the kingdom, the United Kingdom, who also will tell you you're not allowed into the country if you're a radio host who says unsensitive things, right? Michael Savage has been banned. Other conservatives have been. Funny, radical Islamic Muslim preachers who preach hate and death, they seem to be able to come and go in most instances to the United Kingdom. But again, if you're a Michael Savage or conservative talk radio host, or if you're an activist critic, someone like Laura Southern, or Stefan Molyneux, who haven't necessarily been banned from England, but got a lot of trouble in New Zealand and Australia when they tried to go over there. We really do see, and you could tell me if this is true, in all the stories we've done together and all the educational things that you and I have both engaged in for the last 10 years, it seems to me that the UK is very, very far along subordinating their educational program almost exclusively to UN imperatives. Is that fair to say? It is.
You know, Western Europe and Northern Europe are probably the furthest along. So Scandinavia, the UK, and Germany are probably the worst when it comes to indoctrinating the children with the UN's ideology. You know, this LGBT movement, socialism is the cure for all evils, globalism is the solution to every problem. So it's very tragic. And another thing that's happened in the United Kingdom that I think goes right along with this is, on the one hand, they're importing Muslims as quick as they can, you know, as under the guise of bringing in refugees. They deny Christians entry, such as Asia Bibi from Pakistan, who really is in fear of her life for being a Christian. She's not allowed. And actually, they've turned down a number of Christian refugee applications and humiliated, made fun of the person's Christian beliefs. Whereas they bring in Muslims in huge numbers, and then they say, oh, well, the Muslims might not teach the kids what we think they ought to learn, and so now we need to start regulating Christian Sunday schools. It's very sad to see this. They're causing the problem, and they're exploiting the problem they caused to impose more big government, more Orwellian policies, more infringements on inalienable rights. It's very sad to see what's happened in the UK, and it's coming here if we don't
very quickly. Mm-hmm. And one of the stories we talked about just a few weeks ago was how some Muslim parents in England are beginning to push back in the public schools about some of the radical sexualization that is being taught in kindergarten and first grade. And interestingly, rather than just tell what they do with Christian families, shut up, right? And if you say that again, we're going to take action against your kid, or we'll find a way to punish your kid. They actually postpone the program, right? They claim they're going to put it back in, but it does seem that when Islamic moms and dads protest this stuff, the British government takes it much more seriously. What's going on here? Is the British ruling class now, are they globalist, or are they just simply pro-Islamic? Are they anti-Christian? What would be the best way to sum up what's going on with the English elites who are pushing all this?
I think anti-Christian hits the nail on the head. And I fully support these Muslim parents who are concerned about the LGBT indoctrination in the schools. I am too. But what happens is you have this bizarre alliance that makes no sense on the surface. You have radical Islamic, preachers and things like that on the same side with feminists and socialists and globalists. And you're thinking, what in the world? These are very, very different worldviews, but they have a common enemy, and that is the remnants of the Christian church in the United Kingdom. And I think that's what unites them. Once they finish crushing the Christians, all bets are off, and I suspect it's not going to be pretty, but that's where it's going. Well,
it's going to be a showdown, right, between the secular, atheist, materialist, progressive left and a very serious Islam. Yeah. Even if you don't want to, if you faint at the words radical Islam, well, then faint. But that's what you're going to get, right? Right now, Muslim moms and dads are asking to be excused. In another decade, they'll be telling British teachers what they will and won't teach. And that's moving forward. And we see this in Canada too, right? Where the Orwellian nature of their hate speech laws. Hate speech is a Christian pastor condemning homosexuality. Freedom of speech is a radical Muslim imam threatening Jews as pigs and Christians as dogs, right? Yeah. That's one's protected multicultural speech, the other is hate speech, and we see how it's even infecting in the Western Hemisphere here. So there doesn't seem to be an end to this in sight. Your last thoughts, though, Alex, on what can a homeschool mom in Britain do, in the United Kingdom do? Unlike America, where we still have the ability to fight back a little bit, some of these incursions, what can you do in a place like the United Kingdom to continue to have your freedom without the government oversight?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there may not be a lot of good options left. And I think as far as the UK is concerned, the writing is on the wall. Brits are now a minority in their own capital city. They have a Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan, who very clearly is opposed to Christian principles, who very clearly is opposed to individual liberty. And so if I were a Brit, I would be making an escape plan right now, trying to figure out how to get to America or another country that at least tolerates freedom. There's a few places left in Europe like that, but I would definitely be making an exit plan.
Yeah, and the problem is like you said, what happens over there ends up over here as well. The progressives don't. The thing about the progressives is they are a globalist movement. Conservatism, sadly, is an American movement. What the remnants of conservatism in America is not an internationally organized thing. And when it gets here, right, as the last bastion of all of this, we're going to find pretty quickly that our educational options are going to be very limited as well. Alex, thank you so much for your time and your article today.
Thank you so much, Duke.
Well, you sound like an angry white male. I think I have a course for you to take at the University of Kansas, which is offering in the fall a course called Angry White Males. It is a humanities course cross-listed with none other than the Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies Department, and it fulfills the humanities course requirement. Now, this course description says, this course charts the rise of the angry white male in America and Britain since the 1950s, exploring the deeper sources of this emotional state while evaluating recent manifestations of male anger. Are you angry right now reading this?
Yeah, I am. And the reason I'm angry right now is because white male anger means simply anything that, no matter how you insult white men, no matter how you brand masculinity toxic, no matter how you accuse white males of being responsible for every evil. And isn't it funny that in a planet where white males make up a statistically small number of actual people, that it's white males who are responsible for like 100% of the global warming? It's nobody else doing it, right? It's the white male it's the beta male driving his Prius down the road. That's the problem. So in other words, anytime you push back against the slur, anytime you point out that, hey, right, there are other people enslaving, there are other people who are greedy capitalists, there are other people who are polluting the environment, like about 2 billion Chinese, for example, that doesn't count, right? Simply checking the charges, simply answering back, clapping back against the huge scapegoating that's going on here makes you an angry male. And to that degree, I am the happiest, proudest angry male in the country today.
Simmer.
No, I will not simmer. I will not modulate my voice for your feminine ideal. I will not lower my voice in order to make you comfortable in your little corner there.
Well, employing interdisciplinary perspectives, this course examines how both dominant and subordinate masculinities are represented and experienced in cultures and undergoing periods of rapid change connected to modernity, as well as to rights-based movements of women, people of color, homosexuals, and trans individuals.
Right. So pretty much everybody but white men other than white men who like women.
That's what I like so much about the end. I'm like, okay, they got the women, they got the POC, homosexuals, trans. I think.
Who's left?
You.
Non-Westerners.
You angry white
They should have
male.
added non-Westerners, right?
All right. Well, this course is being taught by Christopher E. Forth, who's Dean's Professor of Humanities and History, and his interests include cultural history, gender and sexuality, the body, and the senses. And I really enjoyed looking at the other humanities courses offered at the University of Kansas, and they have American Indian and White Relations to 1865, Being Human in the Workplace, which, how are you not human in the workplace? I don't understand that one. And then sex in history.
The humanities used to be about philosophy and art history and literature programs and the actual historical study of things. Now, do you see what the University of Kansas is doing? You're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. What you're seeing here in Kansas, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the hardest part of the Bible Belt, right? It is middle America, flat as can be middle America. And yet what you're seeing the humanities programs transformed into is nothing more than one long, extended course in the same 2 or 3 social justice topics. It really is shameful when you stop and think about it, but as a humanities professor myself, I can no longer defend the humanities. I mean, if this is doesn't matter if you're taking art history, it's going to be feminist art history. Doesn't matter if you're taking 19th century history, it's going to be the 19th century history of women seamstresses and their struggles for equality. If you're going to be taking a philosophy course, it's going to be the philosophy of Native American studies. Over and over and over again, the humanities have been transformed into the same course in social justice. And so why have these requirements? Why have kids who enter college have to take 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 credits in the humanities broadly as part of a general liberal education liberal arts course, when it's the same course again and again? Just get it over with. Give every student the first year they get there a 4-hour mandatory seminar on left-wing thought and how to think like a liberal, and then get rid of all the humanities courses, because you're just making kids pay for the same stupid course again and again and again.
Well, let's go to the West Coast, to California, because there are not a lot of smart people out there. But at UCLA, we have the African Student Union, who put forth their list of demands. God darn it, they want a $40 million Black Resource Center because they deserve it. And they basically have been saying for a couple months now, and actually extends back a couple years, they've been demanding and saying that the administration, the university, has not done enough to create an adequate campus climate for Black students. And of this list of demands, the most prominent one is the $40 million to build a Black Bruin Resource Center so all Black organizations can be under one roof, and they want them to give enough financial support to maintain these programs.
So build a $40 million complex on campus, allowed only to Black organizations. And the fact that they have that many Black organizations that you require, I mean, don't you need more than one? You really need more than one?
Well, and that's part of their complaint.
Right, that we don't have enough, right?
Yeah.
So build us a $40 million complex somewhere on campus, away from everybody else.
I'm sure.
And then house it with all sorts of Black-only organizations and allow only Black students into it. So why don't you just make it UCLA Campus Black? Why don't you just give them their own campus? You put it in a corner of the campus and let them get degrees in Black studies, let them only have Black professors, only have Black and this is where you build your segregated dorms, right? Build them next to the Black Center, a Black dormitory, which is going to be is coming up, right? An all-Black dormitory, and then build the all-Black gym right next to that, and then build all-Black athletic facilities, right? So, and maybe you have the UCLA Bruins and the UCLA Black Bruins, right? Have a separate football team and a separate wrestling team and a separate swim team. Do Blacks swim? So maybe that's what you do, right? So in other words, just give them their own campus. Just your UCLA Africa, right? And notice the way they spell it with a K. Africa. UCLA Africa, and be done with it.
They could do that. There's actually a lot of research out there about how disproportionate it is the number of black males who are on the sports teams versus the overall black population. Because the enrollment is about 3% black. But get this, 28% of the student body are Asians. That's the highest. Not you whitey. Asians.
So where's Little China? Where's where's Chinatown Bruin? Bruin Chinatown. Where's that?
Ooh.
And instead of the black bears, well, that makes sense, right? You could have the black Bruins, which are bears, and you could have the Asian pandas. I mean, you got this whole thing. Build them, and 3% get a $40 million building. 28%, what we're talking about, a $400 million building, right?
Makes sense to me.
And make Little Chinatown right in the middle of UC. In fact, why don't you just turn the University of California, Los Angeles, why don't you just turn it into a white-free zone altogether? You can have the Asian quadrant, you can have the black quadrant, you can have the transgender quadrant, but just no whiteys allowed.
Yeah, it's an option, and I think you might be tagged for this because one of their demands is talking about anti-blackness. They said they demand a committee or position created who is responsible for investigations pertaining to student acts of discrimination and anti-blackness.
Yeah, and so anybody who opposes the $40 million for the 3%,
Racist.
and by the way, you're LA, for God's sake. How can you can't do better than 3% black enrollment? I mean, what's the matter with you? Just Compton alone. In fact, build the Black Bruin Resource Center in Compton. So, boom. Talk about boom. Think about how much good you could do for that community by dumping all of UCLA's money into Compton, and then you've got everybody in Compton could be part of the system, right? And you're raising and just give them all diplomas. You're fixing the problem. You are fixing inner-city gang-related violence, your poverty, inner-city poverty. You're fixing it. Get rid of all the gun stores and the liquor stores, right, that Whitey put there, and build your new Black Bruin Resource Center in Compton. Snoop Dogg could be the dean of the college.
Does he still go by Snoop Dogg?
I don't know what he goes by anymore.
Formerly Snoop Dogg?
Snoop Lion?
Snoop Lion or
whatever.
Yeah.
Does he swim?
I
don't know.
Good
question. We don't know.
We don't know these things.
Mandatory swimming.
Aha.
Mandatory swimming lessons.
One credit class.
To kill the stereotype in New Black Bruin America.
This is true. It makes you wonder, not at all, why then we have Ivy League students who are supporting segregated housing and graduations on our campuses. So we have Ami Horowitz. If you've seen some of his stuff, he's kind of a man on the street, but he's a documentary filmmaker. And he decided, I'm going to go to Columbia University and talk to these supposedly smart students, because they got into Columbia, and ask if they support segregated housing and graduations.
Would you support segregated housing for black people?
I think a lot of schools have interest housing where black students can and students of color can live together.
Separate from white people?
Yeah, that's a normal thing at most campuses, I think.
And you guys are cool with that?
Yeah.
It comes from the school saying we're now going to offer black students separate housing.
Yeah, I would support it. I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, yeah. No, I would be supportive of it.
Why not? I want to be living with people like me. It wouldn't change anything for me because, as you can see, I'm a white person. But if they would be happy,
I couldn't tell.
And my question is, once you have officially segregated the university, you put all the blacks in their little black corner, all the Asians in their Asian corner, then how soon before they say, hey, wait a minute, look at how unfair this campus is. All the white kids are living by themselves. We can't allow that. But we can't allow them in the black dorms. And we can't allow them in the Asian dorms. So what are we going to do?
It's a conundrum.
Once you segregate everybody else in the name of political correctness, you have defaultedly segregated white people. And white people should not be allowed to live with other white people. What do we do? These idiots. Columbia University is called an Ivy League school. And I think it's because the Ivy bush has grown into their ears and out of their brains because they don't know what they're talking about. And the paternalism of this, right? It doesn't bother me because I'm a white person. Me, right? Well, your university has been screaming diversity at you till you showed up. How important it is for you as a white person to have all these black role models around you. Except where you live, or where you eat, where you exercise, where you go to school, right? How much are these idiots paying for their education? $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year?
For Columbia, at least that much. Yeah. And the thing, if you watch them, no hesitation. Not even I haven't thought about that. No, nothing. It's just black safe spaces. And that just shows you how indoctrinated they are. They can't think for themselves.
I wish Ami would have said to them, should we have, what about the buses? I mean, it's a big campus here at Columbia. Shouldn't we have segregated places on the buses? Shouldn't we allow blacks to ride in only certain parts of that, right? Do you think they would have even got it?
Oh, they would not. They
one
would
of these
have no
morons
idea.
would have even gotten the irony of that?
Huh? Well, maybe they saw, well, Obama was on a bus once, right?
Well, instead of segregated places on buses, maybe we should give blacks their own buses.
Oh, that would make sense. But they get to be the first bus that goes through.
Right.
He decided to go just a few blocks off of the Columbia campus and ask...
You mean into the real world?
Into the real world. Yes, he went a couple blocks off campus into the real world, not with any unicorns in it. And he asked real people...
Real black people.
Black people, white people. Yeah. He asked... Hey, so do you think it's appropriate that we should have segregated housing and graduation?
Why? Are you going back in time? Why are you separating? We're all together.
Well, I don't understand the logic there. I feel like that's basically segregation. We should all graduate together.
I feel that that's segregation and that shouldn't be happening.
It's obviously terrible to separate people by race.
Discrimination might not be the ultimate goal, but people take it that way.
They know something really important, that segregation is going backwards.
Yeah.
That what these idiot white kids are asking for and what black students are demanding on college campuses is not just retrograde, it is a legacy of racism and discrimination that is now sanctioned by our universities, paid for by our universities, institutionally taught in our classrooms by university professors. Racism, segregation, discrimination, bigotry, generalization, stereotyping, scapegoating. This is what they're doing on your college campuses to get young girls as stupid as those to say the things they're saying.
And to make the finest of points on this, Ami then ends the video because he went down to North Carolina and interviewed an imperial wizard for the KKK group. And what do you know? He agrees with the students that there should be segregation.
Yeah.
So
if that's the analogy holds true, Ami did a great job there, then the actual professors and the actual administrators of Columbia are the grand wizards. These dumb girls are nothing more than just the introductory Klansmen, right? They've got their hoods for their first time, and they've got the Columbia logo embroidered on their hood, right?
Oh,
smart stuff.
Well, we have some girls also over at Brown University. Tell me about the Guerrilla Girls.
Guerrilla Girls, spelled the insurgent way, not the animal way. Guerrilla girls at Brown take on white male bias in the art world. And basically, let me sum the story up. I know we can read it, but the story is too many white dudes hanging on walls in art galleries. Forget the fact that the Western tradition of art, those evil white men again, right, from Praxiteles all the way through Hans Memling, all the way through Da Vinci, all the way through on and on and on. All these white dudes, right, making all this art that's in art museums. And boom, hit me with this. 2nd century BC, non-Western art.
Oh.
Okay, right. Western museums, lo and behold, have a lot of white guys hanging in their art. And the argument of these girls is that let's go ahead and empower women to be artists today, because that's exactly what's happening on our college campuses. Girls get more scholarships, girls have more opportunities. There are many more girls than boys in our undergraduate universities today. But rather than focusing on creating great art for the future made by women, we've got to go back and get rid of white male art in the name of fairness.
And so this story specifically, but these Guerrilla Girls have been doing this since I guess 1985 or longer. And one of the founding members, Frida Kahlo, that's her name. She's named after
a great artist. But the
Mexican artist.
The artist is a great artist. The Guerrilla Girl's an idiot,
the fake
right?
girl, yeah. So they had a presentation at Brown University. They hosted this event, and they actually dressed up as gorillas, then the animal.
Gorilla gorillas.
Gorilla
Yeah.
gorillas.
How racist.
That's what I thought.
Isn't it? That really is.
Okay,
or
so
let me guess, they're an all-white group.
We don't know because they wear their masks. Here's the thing. These Guerrilla Girls wear gorilla masks in public and use facts, humor, and outrageous visuals to expose gender and ethnic bias, as well as corruption in politics, art, film, and pop culture. And it makes me wonder, like, they went around and they were, everyone was laughing and applauding them, and they were handing out bananas, and I want to know who those bananas were being handed out to, because that could be a very racist act of them. And so the presentation they did, it was sponsored, of course, by the Department of Visual Art, and Frida began her presentation by pointing out Brown's occupation of indigenous land and involvement with slavery. So these guerrilla girls must go to every university and just point out how bad that university is for where it's located. And then there was a discussion on the group's history and their quest to expose inequality. It's
my favorite is a common practice of the group is what they call their weenie counts.
Oh, yeah.
Really, right? In which the group compared the number of male and female nude figures in the Metropolitan Museum. They found that over 85% of the nudes were female, even though less than 5% of the artists were women. And so this tells us what? That men like women? Oh, wait, are you going to really come after men now because they appreciate the human body, the female body? They see it. So for men to see the female body as a work of art is now cultural oppression. Right?
But here's the thing, because I'm not very into art. I know.
I'm
you love
quite
art.
the connoisseur.
And maybe because I'm a female, whatever, but the naked bodies I think of, David, like that's the one I think of. That's
so
the
in other
only
words,
one. So in
other words,
the opposite.
You're perving on a 15th century, 16th century statue. You're perving.
It's the only one I know.
No, I understand
what I'm
that.
saying.
But my point
That's all we
is,
learn
think about the thinker, right?
Oh,
there
yeah,
are
the thinker.
all sorts of male bodies. Think about the Greeks with their urns, with the great hoplite warriors. You think about, the statuary history of Western culture. Think about the great Greek statues that had been dug up during the Renaissance. The dying warrior, the dying Gaul. Look, this is just absolutely absurd. The fact that men idealize the female body and transform it into art is a compliment. It is a testament to male respect. You know what the opposite of this is pornography. Notice how the guerrilla girls have nothing to say about pornography, right? If you want to talk about the objectification of the female body by men, then why aren't the guerrilla girls out protesting pornography? Because, in this hip age, we don't want to be anti-sex, right? Who are we, the guerrilla girls might argue, to tell anybody how they can represent themselves sexually? And yet, when it comes to fine art and artists who have taken great pains to be able to bring life to stone or to take canvas and paint and create really, really gorgeous images of ideal femininity, now that's what you're picking on right now? This is where you're going as to the art museums?
Well, and that's my argument is the thinking that they're complaining that over 85% of the nudes are female, but they're also complaining that less than 5% of the artists are women. So what do they want? Like they want it to be all males?
The artist should be female.
And all female.
I think what they want is the artist should be all female, and then they alone should create work that celebrates the female form.
And that's where obviously this is stupid.
Of course it's stupid. And by the way, what you never hear from the guerrilla girls is any understanding of what art is. Art for them, and this is so tragic, it's what we do in our universities. What's so tragic about this is that these kids cannot see art as art, they can only see it as politics.
It's your favorite time of the week. Time for some extra credit. This week, sponsored by Harvard. Once a location of learning, critical thinking, and profound introspection. Now, an absolute piss waste of $200,000 in 4 years of your life. And we begin with Donald Trump, because nothing upsets people at Harvard like the Donald. Professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. recently spouted off on Morning Joe about his new documentary on Reconstruction. Gates said that Trump is reminiscent of Klansmen and Jim Crow supporters. And I quote, 8 years of black freedom, as it were, under Barack Obama, basically drove a lot of people crazy. Gates then said today's rise of white supremacy is like the collapse of Reconstruction. Just pause for a moment, and let's also remember the Republicans fought for rights for blacks. Democrats enslaved them.
Yeah, and 8 years of freedom for blacks under Barack Obama when they had no jobs, their debt skyrocketed, more killing of blacks on the streets than any previous administration, and nobody did a damn thing about it. That Barack Obama?
The overpriced Ivy League university is also creating a safe space for its students within their dorms. The renovated Lowell House's dining hall will no longer display portraits of the former university president and alum Abbott Lawrence Lowell, for which the dorm is named. Why? Well, it's because of his racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, and xenophobia. The university claims it's protecting the students from not seeing the picture of the man or his wife. Lowell was president from 1909 to 1933. Or as I say, back in the good old days when safe spaces were needed in bunkers, not dining halls.
The role of the modern Ivy League school to protect kids from art that may actually make them have to think about something. Why not just pull it all down, Harvard? Just have nothing more than whitewashed walls. That wouldn't work either.
Because facts don't care about your feelings, let's discuss a Harvard Law alum by the name of Benjamin Shapiro, who is wreaking havoc for a Michigan State University student. In a recent discovery, it appears that back in September, a student filed a bias report because his roommate was caught in their dorm room watching a Ben Shapiro video. Naturally, the student then filed a complaint which states, Ben Shapiro is known for his inflammatory speech that criticizes and attacks the African American community. I thought hate had no place on MSU's campus, yet MSU has roomed me with someone who supports hate speech. I'd like to assume a bias report will be filed when students are caught watching The Young Turks or The Daily Show, too.
I long for the days of stealing somebody's soy milk and the odd noises coming from the bunk above you and you don't know what's going on. Take us back to a simpler time.
Back at Harvard proper, the university has been entangled in its own admissions scandal of 2019 outside of Operation Varsity Blues, which is all over the news. And because Harvard is so highbrow, of course it's the fencing coach who is embroiled. Coach Peter Brand raised suspicions after his $550,000 house sold for almost $1 million. And it was sold to a man whose son was actively looking to apply at Harvard and be on the fencing team. And then the kid did attend Harvard and was on the fencing team. And his dad sold the house just 17 months later for a $325,000 loss. But the dad claims he felt sorry for the coach having to travel so much to go to fencing practice, which was just a 12-mile commute. Let's just say now everyone involved is on guard.
Yeah, and the irony for me is that the word fencing means dueling with swords, but it also means trafficking in stolen goods that you don't rightly own. How ironic.
And finally, but certainly not least, let's pick on the Harvard student government, whose members may one day be your representatives, because if AOC can do it, we're all doomed. Anywho, the student government decided to give more than $2,000 to the Palestine Solidarity Committee for the Israeli Apartheid Week, which is meant to raise awareness of Israel's treatment of Palestinians. In other words, they're going to blow $2,000 on saying how awful Israel is and how oppressed Palestine is, complete with support of the BDS movement.
It's not apartheid if Israel allows Palestinians to work, eat, play, visit, and worship inside the bounds of Israel. It's just not apartheid.
And that's your extra credit for this week. A+ for all of you out there. Now, if you have any stories you'd like to suggest, go ahead, type them down below in the comments section, just right there, and then make sure you hit that like button and share this episode. And don't forget to subscribe to the Dr. Duke Show on iTunes, where you can hear all of these great stories. But you don't have to look at our faces.
And that does it for us this week on the Dr. Duke Show. If you like what you have heard, please share the episode on YouTube and on Facebook. We're going to be on both platforms for our loyal listeners. And podcast us. Take the podcast for your friends. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie, and we'll see you next time.